Okay.
Good evening and welcome to the Finance and Facilities Committee meeting. It's February 11th, 2021, and it's 6:04 p.m. Let's start out by introducing ourselves. Lisa?
Lisa Raymond, Interim Assistant Superintendent for Business.
I'm David Warner, Board of Education member and committee chair. Laser?
Laser Alert Network Administrator.
Amy?
Amy Ashley Moore, District Treasurer.
Heather?
Heather Gordon, Facility Secretary. DeMichael Falcone.
Chris?
Chris Valent, parent of two.
Debbie?
Debbie DeYoung, community member.
Katie?
Katie McGee, parent of a sixth grader.
Michael?
Michael Falcone, I'm the Director of Facilities and Operations.
Very good. Fred?
Fred Seba from BBS Architects and Engineers.
Ashley?
Ashley Pineda, Board Trustee and parent of two children.
Tracy? Oh, yes, you're in observation only mode. Okay. Tanya?
Tanya Dragic, Trustee.
ADC is also in observation only mode. Jessica?
Hi, Jessica Muldoon, parent of a kindergartner. Thank you.
Very good. Anyone I missed? Carol? We're introducing ourselves.
Her audio disconnected.
Oh,
Miss Allen?
Carol Ellen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Introduce yourself.
Carol Allen from Hartsdale, community member.
Very good. All right. So, our first order of business is to review and adopt the meeting notes from the last meeting. Let's see if I can share my screen here. Just a minute. Let me first bring up the meeting notes. And then. Okay, I've got the notes up on my screen now. Share screen. Boom. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is for the Finance and Facilities Committee from January 28th. Of course, all of this stuff is on the directory for the email that I sent you if you're a member that I have on my Google Drive. So the meeting was called to order at 5:35. Those are the people that were. See if I can get it to move. There we go. The main things that happened last time, we introduced Lisa Raymond. We discussed the budget development process. We'll have some more updates on some of this stuff later on. We talked about draft one of the budget. I believe that has been presented to the Board of Education since, and we're working our way down towards a lesser amount of the budget. That's on the way. There were questions about the governor's state aid proposals and STAR, and while the great and terrible things that we thought were going to happen to state aid did not end up materializing, there are some problems, and those are laid out in the ASPO expresses concerns. So the Association for School Business Officials have kind of laid that out, and we're working on a letter writing campaign, and we kind of agreed that we would try and get that posted. Last year, we talked about Proposition 1 last year that allowed us to set aside any leftover funding from savings at the end of the year, in addition to the above and beyond the 4%. And we recommended doing that again, putting that on the ballot again for this year. and have sent that on up to the board. We talked about funds available for capital projects. The committee recommended that the administration create a proposal for moving some of our ERS reserves into a teacher's retirement fund and possibly into our capital reserve fund. And that needs to become an agenda item on the board. We passed that by the board, and they've kind of come back and did not object to it in concept. We now need to have an agenda item with actual numbers for them to look at and vote yay or nay on. We went over, Mike Falcone went over what the status of the facilities were last time around. And we have a little bit of an update on that. A couple of things that we've progressed on a little bit since then. We'll come back to that on our agenda this time. But a lot of the information was about what we were doing at RJ Bailey. Of course, the outdoor stuff now is on hold because of the snow. But Mike will talk about that a little further later on. Regarding a facilities project recommendation process, the committee recommended that the board authorize an RFP to be issued for an energy performance contract. So that's another case in which we'll end up with an agenda item, and we'll work with BBS on that. There wasn't any objection to that when I brought that up at the last board meeting. And the big deal was, of course, that we modified our process a little bit and told BBS architects what we kind of were looking for, and they were supposed to come back to us with a proposal at this meeting, which they will do. So that's pretty much what's in the minutes from last time. Is there anything anybody sees that needs to be changed or corrected or updated?
No.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adopt these meeting notes as minutes of the 128 meeting?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we adopted the minutes. PTD. Okay, that brings us back to our agenda. And let's see if I can bring up the agenda. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So we are now on item 3, finance, with Lisa Raymond. First, we talk a little bit about the school budget development process, the draft budget presentation at the February 2nd Board of Education meeting. We have actually a copy of that presentation on the Google Drive right now. It should be posted on the website. Lisa, has anybody gotten that posted yet?
Yes, I've spoken with Laser and he got that up today.
Good. At that presentation, Lisa told us that the current draft of the budget resulted in a 3.04% tax levy increase. The board kind of, by and large, when asked for their opinions, said to go through the process of trying to reduce it further if we could. I think, and there was a suggestion that we try and target 2%. So that process is ongoing, Lisa?
Correct. I have been, since the last board meeting, I have set up meetings with every principal and director, and I'm going through their budget with them so that I can understand it in more detail of what they're asking for, what they're expecting. And I have made some adjustments myself, which I will be recommending to Dr. Chase. But Dr. Chase and Dr. Reynolds and I will be meeting to go over the reductions that we will be proposing to stay within the 2% tax levy increase that you have all asked for.
And once that second draft has come out, it's probably a good idea that we do as a finance and facilities committee what we did last year, which is to spend a meeting more or less going over that budget in detail and getting public input on it. So I expect that I believe we have an agenda item towards the end of this meeting where we'll schedule our next meeting, and we can talk about that at that point.
Okay.
The governor's budget concerns. I
Okay,
started
so-
to mention, yes, what's the
Oh,
status on that?
I'm sorry. Today, Dr. Chase and Mr. Williams met with legislatures from Westchester County to discuss their concerns about the governor's state aid runs. Tomorrow, I will participate in a Southern Westchester school business official meeting where the same legislatures will be there to discuss these cuts and where our concerns are, where we see things going. And we've also been asked to be able to provide a detailed list of COVID-related expenses that we have had to pay for that are above and beyond our budget. And that will all tie in with the CARES Act, the funding from the federal government that comes to the state that the governor is giving all school districts through the same federal grant process as like Title I, Title II, that kind of thing. They are asking us for details and where we think things should go and what we're asking for, because they're going to be lobbying hard for that. On the same note, the last meeting I told you that I would come up with a letter that has been like uniform for districts to send to legislatures to lobby the governor. And I've sent that to Dr. Chase for approval to be either put on our website, given to the PTA, et cetera, so people can start lobbying for our district to get more funding.
Good. So then, let's see, I think we already talked about Proposition 1. Other than changing the date on the proposition, you know, for the budget year, is there anything that we need to do to reword it, or is it pretty much word for word as it would have been last year?
Correct. Yep. We would just
Okay.
need to change the dates. Other than that, it's fine.
And that will end up on as a resolution on a future board agenda that needs to be approved by the time we approve the amount of the budget. As long as we do it at that point, we're good. Let's see, there's a budget hearing on 5/4. The budget vote's currently still scheduled for 5/18. There'll be some presentation schedules that'll be set up by the administration in which they'll run their online version of the presentation, and that's pending.
Right.
Let's see. And that brings us to the Repair Reserve Capital Projects Funds spreadsheet, which I believe you've done some reconciliation work and come up with
Yes.
a little bit more information than we had last time.
Correct.
I'm
So
gonna-
I've been working with our external auditors, Scott Oling from PKC, something like that, those auditors. And I just wanted to make sure that what I had in the repair reserve, what Amy and I had in the repair reserve and in the capital fund were, we were in agreement with our external auditors. And as far as the repair reserve is concerned, we are right on target. That currently we have $1,611,827. There are two amounts that are designated from previous years, whether you want to keep that or you want to get rid of that to just keep the 1.6 million. But the mansion roof repairs, even though we know it was going to come in more than the 286,000, there was money in the repair reserve to help offset that of $286,370. And then at Highview and LF Jackson, there were exterior door replacements that hadn't been done yet. So that money is still there earmarked, and that's $166,180. So if you kept those $2 amounts intact to still offset those costs, there's $1,159,277 in the repair reserve that can be used for any future projects. Then on the capital fund, we really dove deep into the capital fund, and I went back years to try to figure out what was happening, what was the process, what was being paid. And I finally came down to the last time I reported to you, I said that the ending balance at June 30th was $1,341,596. The auditors, though, had $1,598,760. So what was my gap there? So in the H fund, which is the capital fund, there was a separate line item that was called capital reserve fund balance, and that made up the difference. So that money is there. So technically there is almost $1.6 million in the capital fund. What we are trying to establish is this. A capital reserve fund is created by the voters. You have to ask the voters to establish one. If they say yes, you can. And then you ask them, could we contribute over the next 5 years no more than $5 million? So if there was excess money, you could put money in there. The way you get rid of that money or spend that money is by voter approval. So it's a very, very tight and stringent reserve. I can't find anything that says that the board in 2012-13 established a capital reserve. So I'm thinking that it was just a set aside money, but I'm still trying to look into that with Ivy to just double check that. In the event that it was just mislabeled, that money can go to the capital fund. So there really is almost $1.6 million there. In addition, the board had set aside $2,222,243 as an appropriated fund balance to be used for mansion roof repairs or mansion repairs. I'm not positive that it was for a roof, but in 2020, July of 2020, the board approved to take $750,000 out of there for HVAC repairs. Okay. And then in the budget that was just approved, there's $1,331,000 that will go to the capital fund. And then again, in this budget, you ask the taxpayers to do ECP playground, HV or Highview playground, and the RJ Bailey playground share with the town. So right now, in the capital fund, there is just a little more than $4 million that can be used. But I have to preface this with this statement. The $1,598,760 that the external auditors have on the books, okay? That money was transferred in over years for certain projects. And I went over those with Mike Falcone, and there were 7 projects. One is still open, which are the mansion roof repairs of $1,300,000. Everything else has been satisfied. They were boiler repairs, campus consolidation, things like that. According to the auditors, since we asked the taxpayers to put the money in there for these specific items, if any money is left over, it should go back to the general fund because the project is over. So I have presented or asked the attorneys if the board puts that $298,000 back to the general fund, could they then make a motion to reallocate that money and put it back into the capital fund for future projects? And I'm just waiting to hear from them what they say on that.
Lisa?
Yes.
I just caught this thing that you said that's a little concerning, which is that that you can't find evidence that the board ever created a capital reserve. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, I can't find anything in the minutes that says that a capital reserve was established. So a capital reserve and a capital fund are completely 2 different things. A capital fund is like the general fund, the cafeteria fund, the federal funds. It is a fund that is set aside just for capital projects that we ask the taxpayers, like we did in this last budget, can we take $1,331,000, put it into the capital fund for capital projects? A capital reserve is more stringent. It has to be voter approved to establish, voter approved to put money in, and voter approved to take money out. I'm thinking, because I can't find anything, that it was just mislabeled, but I'm still
I'm sorry, so now I'm confused. So which one are we missing? The capital fund or the capital reserve?
Capital reserve.
Capital reserve, okay.
Yes.
So God forbid that you can't find it.
Okay, so if I can't find it, Tanya, so basically I think what that means is this, and I have confirmed this with our auditors. I think it was just mislabeled in our software. I really think that
Okay.
it is capital fund. It was just mislabeled.
Okay.
But I want to dig a little deeper just to make sure that it's not a capital reserve. If it is a capital reserve, that is fine. We just have to remember that that $257,000 that is sitting in there cannot come out of that account unless the voters say yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much. That was very clear.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks.
So then, best case, we actually have 257,000 more dollars than we thought we had. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
So now we're over the $5 million mark in terms of money that we could potentially, as all this works out, spend on the various repair and capital projects. Okay.
Correct.
Excuse me. Sorry, it's Chris. I don't know if you see my hand. So as far as earmarked funds, is the reason why the high school vestibule project isn't in here because that's being funded by the Smart Schools money?
Correct. That is a completely different account. Correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure we had everything covered. Thanks.
Correct. Yeah.
And has anybody, does anybody have any information on the elevator at Woodlands? I think that was a question in one of the email threads. It was a $30,000 amount that was set aside or listed in the building conditions survey, and I don't know that that any money has been spent on that. Do we know?
Mike would know.
What I've been doing is I've been fixing with the budget that I have. I've been fixing all anything that was wrong with the elevators and any non-compliances that we've been going through, or all the violations that we keep on getting tagged every year. So I've been plucking away with it with my own budget. We never really set that money aside to go ahead and hit everything on the in the high school, but I've been fixing a little at a time the past few years, correcting every violation we've had.
Okay, so it's general fund.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Other questions? Okay, so I'm going to close this back up. Okay.
David, I'm sorry. I had one more question for Lisa. I think this was something I asked at one of the previous board meetings, was whether there was some kind of a cap on,
Yes.
I can't remember.
Yep, I remember that. So I looked into that, and there is no cap on what can go to the capital fund as long as it is earmarked for certain projects.
Okay.
The 4%, I believe you might be thinking, is the 4% of fund balance. But also remember, if we go for a bond, and I'm thinking that Fred could probably help me out with this more, a school district can't bond more than the 5-year average of your tax roll assessment. Fred, 7%?
But as far as aid, if you're talking about maximum cost allowance, is that
Yes.
what you mean? Yeah, so that's, you can bond more than that, but the aid that they will pay you on that bond will be limited by the maximum cost allowance up at SED.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, it ends up being a tiny amount for Greenburgh. So yeah.
Everything, all aid ends up being a tiny amount. All right, so next on the agenda, facility status for Mike Falcone. I know it hasn't been long. Mike, can you fill us in on anything that's changed?
There's nothing that was changed at ECP, LF Jackson, no new issues. None at Highview School, RJ Bailey. We're still on for next week, starting on the ventilation for the gym. the temperature is fine in the building. I'm in that building basically almost every single morning. I know I had a complaint that it was cold and somebody showed me a thermometer. My head custodian went into the room the next day. It shows that it was 71 degrees. Of course, the masonry's, that's outside. That's on hold. The fencing is on hold for the playground. And the cleaning out any outside is on hold. Playground equipment. Sheep and I and the assistant principal and the security over there. We had a meeting with the playground company. We are tweaking. We came up with a plan. We're tweaking a little bit more. I'm hoping to get another renderings, maybe by tomorrow. I believe we can wrap this up by the end of next week, and then we'll order the following week. I'm hoping to break ground for the new playground probably, I want to say April. Okay. I really would like to push for April because I do want the kids to play on the brand new playground over there. Woodlands, no new issues. Security vestibule.
Hold it before you go forward.
Sure.
The landscape buffer with the car wash. Dr. Allen provided us with a copy of the plans, and it said that they were required to provide, October Glory red maples and little leaf linden trees. So they have to do that. That's their cost. Do we need to do anything about that, or are we good?
We don't have to do anything about that. I mean, that was agreed upon with the town.
Good.
I don't think we have any say on that.
Okay, that's fine then. Okay, go ahead with Woodlands.
Woodlands, security vestibule. I know what we've been working on it. We had, one meeting, actually a couple of meetings. I'm not quite sure where they're at with the security vestibule, but they're moving forward. I know that. The new freezer, that of course that is on hold, that the board approved. We have the PO for it, but until the weather cooperates, because that freezer's outside. So until the weather, cooperates, they can't even pour the slab for that one. BBS confirmed, the roof project is already up in SED. SED didn't approve of it yet. I know it's close. Maybe BBS knows a little bit more about it. But what I understand from New York State Ed is they're very close. Not sure what else is what they're waiting for.
Well,
Go ahead.
Jason Lee here from BBS.
Hey, Jason, how are you doing? I didn't even see you on.
Hey, doing great. So right now there's just one conflict that they're asking for, which they've never asked for before. So we're just looking for clarity on one question. We're hoping to have an answer for that, if not tomorrow, early next week, and then we'll have approval, as soon as that one question gets resolved.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, they said that they were very close. He says, we're just waiting for one little thing. So I wasn't sure what it was.
And what was that question?
I don't know.
The question?
So Lee will have an idea.
Yeah. Well, no. So it's very, very technical. So basically for the asphalt shingles, there's a portion in our spec section where the shingles must be nailed down to withstand 110 mile-an-hour gusts for 3 seconds. And what they're asking for us to do is base calculations off of the corners and the base of the shingles for that code. And basically it's a nailing pattern, which the manufacturer gives us a nailing pattern for the specs to meet that requirement, but they're asking us for additional calculations. So, okay. And they've never asked us for that before.
Okay, fair enough. The weather is becoming less and less kind. Okay, thank you.
Caretaker's house, he's still waiting for the permits. I'm sure also the weather is going to slow him down there.
Right. Okay. So the snow has to melt before they can do it, or how does that work?
No, it's just a little messier when you have snow, but you know, they can do it.
Okay.
You know, more so the permit.
Okay.
Mr. Falcone, could you just clarify who the permit is granted by?
Okay, so it's Gentile ended up winning the contract to do the demolition, and he has to apply for the asbestos removal permit.
So who grants that permit? The town, the state?
No, that's the Department of Health.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Mr. Falcone, when that rendering for the vestibule is available, we'll be able to see it.
What was that? I'm sorry.
When the modified rendering is available for the vestibule, is the BOE going to get to see a copy of it before?
Absolutely, absolutely. But right now, you know, it's we're working with the principal. Once we have all the you know I's dotted, T's crossed, and BBS has a good renderings, exactly what it's going to look like, the board is going to be the first one to take a look at it and say, this is what we're going forward on. And like I said, we're working well together.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Moving on then. Thank you, Mike. Facilities project recommendation process, the main event of the night. Okay, so we agreed that we were going to work with BBS to generate a proposal based on the building condition survey, estimated expenses and priorities. We talked a little bit last time about what those priorities, those priority needs were, and those got posted on the website. BBS did a bunch of work on that. We discussed ventilation versus building envelope needs, and it looks like, you know, due to COVID-19 and everything else, you got to do the ventilation first, which is great. Since that's that I think everyone pretty much agrees that that's what needed to happen. You'll see that that's incorporated into the proposals that we're about to see. We talked about last time we talked about the revised ECP wing estimate. The range they gave us last time was 11 to 14 million for 130 students. If we assume that the students that are now in Lee F. Jackson could remain in the classes they're in, then you might be able to reduce that further. I think there's a lesser price tag that they came up with if we want to figure that into our calculations. But let's get through the main presentation first and see how that fits in. And so that brings us now to the BBS architect presentation. We asked them to come back with an idea, and they've done that. A whole bunch of spreadsheets are up on the Google Drive, and Fred Seba is now going to present to us what they came up with. Welcome, Fred. And Laser, can you make Fred a co-host so that he can show his materials?
Unfortunately, David, because I had a medical procedure today, so I'm at home now, so I'm not going to be able to do screen sharing from here, but I know you had them. Will you be able to do that for me?
Let me see what I can do. Just a moment. Let's see. Get out of that.
If not, Fred, I can bring them up.
Okay.
All right. If you give Jim Wadig the ability, he can do the screen sharing if you want to do that.
Okay, Laser, can you make Jim Wadig a co-host?
Yeah, you just have to stop sharing, David.
Okay. Boom.
And what do you want me to start with, Fred? You just kind of guide me through it. I have them all queued up.
Well, I don't know, David. I mean, we have each building that we have color coded, each of the facility estimated expense forms. We can start with that and go through them, or, you know, there are also some summary sheets. I don't want to get bogged down in too much detail and go through every item, but this is what we did. We took the facility estimated expense forms that the committee previously had, and Jim and I sat and we prioritized it. And we prioritized it in two phases. The first one is yellow, and the yellow phase is the first approximately $5 million. That would be the capital reserve and the repair reserve. That's what we talked about last time. And then the second phase would be in the blue, and that would be approximately a $5 million bond referendum. So I give some parameters that we kind of used at the end. I'll just go over them quickly here. So what we put in phase one is that number one, there are some items in this report that SED is going to require the district to do no matter what project you do at any particular building. They're going to force you to do that. It's on the evaluation of existing building forms. And if we check that nonconformance, they are going to require you to do that anyway. So those have to be in there. We don't really have much of a choice on those.
And what do those look like?
I can go through some of those in a little while.
Okay.
Ventilation is a lot of that.
Good.
The second priority in phase one was COVID-related fresh air and exhaust, which is what the direction that the committee had given us last time as well. The third was code violations. So those are in there in phase one as well. And the fourth is Americans with Disabilities Act, so handicap upgrades to your buildings. Again, some of that SED is going to require you to do anyways. For instance, if your nurse's office or your nurse's office bathroom are not ADA accessible, they are going to require you to do that as part of any project. Could be a roof project or a playground project. They are going to make you do that because that space has to be accessible to all of the students. So those are the parameters we used for phase one. And then when we got to phase two, and I will tell you, Jim and I, this was not an incredibly easy thing to do because we had about $30 million worth of priority one items in our report. And we're trying to narrow that down to $10 million. So we really had to try and, distinguish which were higher number one priorities. And we've done that. We've taken a shot at it. And, that's why we sent the email out to the group. And I have to apologize. I know I sent the email out to the group and I just hit a reply all, and it was talking about the car wash. And I apologize for that. That was my fault. I should have changed the subject line on that. But so we were just looking for a little bit of feedback. So phase two, or that potential $5 million bond referendum, you'll see that in blue here. These items are structural issues. So masonry, lintels, retaining walls that are collapsing, things like that. Safety of students and staff. So high priority safety items that we identified in the report. Again, code requirements. And then, so that's basically it in phase two. So that's the criteria we use to pick phase two. What would be our next highest priority, after the first $5 million. So, you'll see, and then we also added, you'll see there in the upper right, there's a green column for energy performance contract. And I could talk about that as well. We identified about $3.8 million worth of items in our report that could fit very easily within an energy performance contract. And there are a number of items in here that could also fit, but because it's an 18-year blended payback, I can't do, all of the roofs in the district. I might be able to do a little bit of roof work.
I thought you included one roof. When you get to your summary sheet, you can show us which roof, I think it was Hydrant.
In phase one. Yeah, I think in phase one, we included one roof. So, there are a number of items that we also did not include, which I outline, and you'll see that as one of the pages too. Gas service upgrades, boiler replacement, clock system replacement, roof replacement, exterior doors, air handling unit replacement, and even some ceiling replacement. And some of those things will qualify for an energy performance contract, but again, not all of them because they have much higher payback. So it has to be 18 years or less blended. So I am estimating that we could do an energy performance contract somewhere between the $7 and $10 million range for the school district, and take at least $3.8 million off of this list, and probably another 2 or 3 million plus whatever else the energy service companies identified. So that's kind of a quick overview of that. I don't know if you want to go building by building. You can see what we identified as yellow. In the admin building, we did a little bit differently. And we talk about that later too. The admin, you'll see orange in there. That's the only building that you see orange. And the reason we did that is that we didn't know how the the facilities committee and the board wanted to handle the administration building. So we've shown items in there, such as the, I don't know if you could scroll to some of the orange ones, Jim. So HVAC in the steam director's office, providing mechanical fresh air for the building. So those are shown in orange, not included at this point in either of the phases 1 or 2, because again, we had to make a lot of tough decisions, but they are on a list as to what we included and what we didn't include, so that if you guys take a look at that list and say, well, you know what, this item on that list is very, very high priority, then we'll work that in and take something else out. So this is kind of our first blush. This is doing it away from the committee. This is us prioritizing. So that's what this document represents. And there's one of these for each of the buildings. You'll see them all color coded as to, again, phase 1, phase 2, energy performance contract, and then only at the administration building, just one that says administration.
So I would like to highlight the fact that that we did make a recommendation that before we could possibly reoccupy the administration building, we need to have that taken care of. And right now, of course, the principal of the high school is sitting in the back of in a little office in the back of the library, and things are. There's space that should belong to the high school students that's being taken up by the administration because of their evacuation. So at some point, we're going to want to fold that, I guess, at least the part of the orange stuff that's required before we can reoccupy the building back into things. But let's, students come first. So I guess you could show us the summary, or you can show us maybe, does anybody want to look at a particular school before we look at the summary?
Yes,
I
I
had
do.
a question, and Chris has had her hand up for a while. So Chris,
Okay,
would you like to go first?
Sure. Just as maybe I have 3 questions about 3 buildings, but maybe explaining one will explain the others. So let's take a look. Well, no, I need at least 2 of these questions. So if you take a look at the ECP spreadsheet for your priorities, we've known now for a while that the mechanical exhaust fans and the ventilation is $575,000. Can you just confirm for me that that will take it up to current code and not whatever standards have been grandfathered in for that older building?
Yes, so that's a good question. It will bring it up to current code. That is adding mechanical fresh air into that building in order to bring it up to the 2020 building code, which is what New York State Education Department is enforcing at this point.
Okay, that was the easy question. Now we could go to either Highview or Woodlands Middle High School, either one. Okay, so if you're looking at Highview, I see what you've outlined in yellow, which is
phase 1.
Top the one with the monies we currently have, I believe.
Right.
You've left off there. So the codes that begin with 87 and 88, I believe, have to do with ventilation in general, if I'm understanding everything correctly, mechanical fresh air in units. So if I look at 87.1, provide unit vents for mechanical fresh air in all rooms, 30 of them, $2,700,000. Are we not highlighting that now because we found a workaround that will get us through our current crisis, or?
So that's the way that building was designed. That building was designed when it was built with operable windows, natural ventilation, and an exhaust system, which is still allowed by code. So
allowed by
because
code.
we only had $10 million to work with.
Right. No,
we weren't able to fit this in, but that item is in the list of, hey, by the way, these things are not in there yet. Just wanted to let you know in case you guys want to reprioritize, and move some things around. So yes, it is a fresh air item. It is a mechanical fresh air item, but what you have still meets current code. It's just not mechanical fresh air.
We meet current code, and I presume we've got kids in those rooms because we've found ways to get the fresh air intake that is needed to keep the viral load down. I don't know if we'll be able, if we have full attendance next year thinking not just code, but COVID safe or the next virus that'll happen the following year.
Mhm.
Can you just speak to?
Sure. So current code also allows natural ventilation and an exhaust system, which is exactly what you have in that building. And the way that works is that you would open the windows and the exhaust fans have to run all day during occupied mode. So let's say from 8 a.m. till 3 p.m., whatever that is. Michael, I think, is running them for longer periods of time now because of COVID. And those fans need to run and they need to continue to run, usually an hour or two before school, an hour or two after school. You would open the windows, obviously in the spring and summer and the fall, you could open the windows probably 100%. Again, weather conditions permitted, safety permitting, permitted. During the winter, you would only be able to open those windows maybe an inch a window or 3 or 4 inches on one of the windows that's all the way in the back of the classroom. And that's how you would introduce your fresh air into that classroom.
So, and I might be combining different conversations in my head. So if we are aiming for full attendance at some point in the fall, whether the beginning of school year or hopefully before December, I believe there's some sort of metric that you have to calculate for number of air exchanges based on the room space and the number of people in the room.
Mhm.
Could we, with the means we're using right now, increase the population in that room?
Yes, actually, that room was designed when the building was built for 30 occupants in the classroom. So that system is designed to accommodate that. And I had several conversations with the state education department, specifically regarding Bailey and this building, just to make sure that what I was saying was accurate. So yes, it can accommodate full occupancy in that building. And the heating system in that building was designed to have windows open during the winter and be able to heat those classrooms appropriately and properly.
Right.
Not
Like
100% open, obviously, if it's 20 degrees out, but they are designed, the heating system is designed, the baseboard in those rooms is designed to have those those windows cracked open and then have the exhaust system on during peak design conditions.
Okay, and then the question was the same for the Woodlands 1978 edition and the music rooms. It's the same.
Yep.
We've left that off the current list. I'm assuming if we have.
That's on my list too, as an item that's not included at this point, but should be given strong consideration based upon the feedback that we have gotten so far from the facilities committee. So yes, I mean, I wish we had, more money than 10 million to work with in order to construct this project, but I understand why. So we went with the 10 million total that, we discussed at the last meeting.
And you would prioritize the items that you have in blue, which are the possible $5 million bond items, over these ventilation issues, which you've left off of the.
Well, the reason that I did that is because those ventilation issues not only met code at the time the building was built, they meet current code.
Okay.
So I could design a building right now with occupancy, with operable windows and an exhaust system and submit it to the state education department and they would approve it.
Okay.
We don't do that because, as everyone would say, well, who the heck opens the windows when it's 10 degrees outside and turns the exhaust fan on? Well, that's the way the building was designed. So we don't design buildings that way now, but if we did, SED would approve it. So
right, okay.
It does meet code. That's why I kind of pushed it into, I'll say phase 2A.
Right, okay.
Items that identified, say, I'd really like to be able to work these in, but I don't feel they're a higher priority than what we already have in phases 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Okay.
Tanya?
The other thing I wanted to point out, you'll see a little R in just to the right of the cell, the highlighted cell there.
Yes.
And that R indicates that it would be appropriate for a repair reserve.
Okay.
So the thing is with repair reserves, again, they're worded pretty specifically that it has to be a repair type item. It can't be a capital construction. You couldn't, put in a new track where you didn't have a track before. It's a repair reserve. So we have to make sure that enough of these items in phase 1 can be classified as fitting into a repair reserve. And we do, we have enough in there. So That's what that little R is indicating, just to make sure that we had enough in there that we could use that whole repair reserve and not have to worry about trying to explain to the state why a particular item qualified as a repair reserve type item.
Very good. Tanya?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure because I didn't add up the totals. So everything in yellow together adds up to 5 million, and then in blue adds up to an additional 5 million.
Okay, so we did the math for you, Tanya. Yes,
The
it is
file
in
that says
here, it's
Fred.
later on.
Fred Green.
So,
Okay.
So wait, so just before you go on to the math, I just wanted you to just qualify something for me regarding these energy contracts. When you said that we could save 2 million here, like another 3.5 million there, were you talking about 2 million on the 5 million and 3 million on the other 5 million, or was that for the total like 30 million, or for the total? I mean, what was that? What was the savings on basically?
so that's for the total of the building condition survey report.
Okay, got it.
Most of that items are not, in fact, I don't think any of those items are in phase 1 or phase 2.
Okay.
So we're talking about insulation, pipe insulation, boiler breaching insulation. We're talking about automatic temperature controls, which your automatic temperature controls are a mess. Many of them don't function properly, and I know Michael is working on that. Lighting, converting lighting to LED. Domestic water heater replacement, burner replacement, and steam trap work. So those are the kind of major categories that I have shown here in the energy performance contract. Sorry, you can see them in green here that, Jim is showing you. Most of them are priority 3 items, or some of them priority 2s. So it would not come out of this 10 million or even the first 30 million.
Even the first, got it. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, did I have anything else?
Sorry. And just to clarify, so for the EPC last meeting, you said that they are basically no charge items, but can you clarify, are they items we need to pay for up front and then we kind of recoup our money by our energy cost savings? Or can you just outline a little bit for everyone, once again, how that works?
Sure. So what we do is, let's say you have a $10 million energy performance contract that, we put out an RFP, we get all of these results back, we select a contractor to move ahead with. So what happens is the contractor does all the work, finishes all the work, then the district goes out and does a tax-free municipal lease. So you borrow the money, and then you pay the contractor for the work out of that money. Now you have to pay that money back over time. So what happens is the energy savings from the work that the contractor did will more than offset the lease payment that you have to pay back. So all you're basically doing is moving the money from your facilities and whatever you would have paid on gas, oil, and electric, you're moving that over to debt service, and you're using that money to pay back the tax-free municipal lease. And those savings are guaranteed by the energy performance contractor. So if he says you're going to save $250,000 a year, and in year 2, you only save $200,000, they have to write a check for the $50,000 difference to the school district. So as a result, it has no net impact to the taxpayer. So you don't raise your taxes at all in order to implement an energy performance contract. It pays for itself out of the energy savings. And on top of that, you guys get the state aid back. I know you only get 10%, but you guys will get that 10% back. So if it's a $10 million energy performance contract, you'll get roughly $1 million back over the 18 years or 15 years of that EPC. So it generates positive cash flow, and it pays for itself out of the portion of the energy savings. There's always more savings than what they predict because they don't want to shortchange themselves. They don't want to write checks every year. So they're conservative with their estimates. So every one of these that we did, we've seen that if they guaranteed you were going to save $250,000, most districts actually save $300,000. So that $50,000 goes back to the school district, and then you get the aid on that work on top of that.
That all sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
What? We have another question? I can't see everybody right now. Just a second.
I'll interject there before we move on from the EPC. So, Fred, you did mention that some portion of the other items could qualify for an EPC, but wasn't 1,000%. Is that number, is that a high dollar amount, or is that low, or?
As I mentioned before, I think we would probably get another, I'm going to say 2 or 3 million that we would be able to take out of the BCS and work into the energy performance contract. Some of the other items that they're going to include in the $7 to $10 million range that I mentioned, they're going to do LED lighting at every building. I don't know if I had LED lighting, both interior, exterior at every building, but they will do that because that is one of the best payback, highest saving items. So that's actually a great thing to have done. And then that will drive some longer payback items. So, maybe take another 2 or 3 million out of the BCS plus the 3.8 million that we've already estimated. So yeah, I would say, somewhere between $6 and $7 million should be able to come out of the BCS and done as part of an energy performance contract.
Okay, so my follow-up question is, obviously all of these things take time to do. I know we had mentioned in the past that we would need to do an RFP for this and go through that whole process. Is there any reason we can't kick that process off now, sooner rather than later? No, we can start that process right away. And the beauty of it is that, so we put out an RFP, we get contractors to submit back, we negotiate scope with all those contractors based upon the district's preference on the scope that's in there. So we're allowed to negotiate scope with each of the contractors. Then we ask them for their best and final offer. Then they'll do what's called the detailed energy audit and come back with a final proposal. And up until that point, there is no cost or obligation to the school district. So you have nothing to lose. If the board decides at that point, you know what, we decided we're not going to go ahead with an energy performance contract, there's no cost to the school district. So that's kind of the beauty of it. So if you want us to start that process, there's no downside to starting that process right now.
Lisa, can you tell us, is it better to have the board look at several energy performance contract candidates and go through something like an interview process with them, or is it better for them to farm that out to us?
Right. Fred, here's my history with energy performance contracts. We would put out an RFP. People would bid on us. You would look at them and then make a recommendation to the board.
Correct.
Right. So it's not so much, David, that you're going to interview the people. It's who is giving us the best bang for our buck.
Right.
Okay, that's easy. So since the board has what's the first thing that the board has to actually vote on? The contract?
No, well, Fred, correct me if I'm wrong. They have to say, yes, we want to do an EPC. Here's what we want to include in the EPC. You guys would put something together. We do an RFP, get everything back, and then they would decide.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would just need direction from the board to proceed ahead. Technically, an energy performance contract is considered a contingent expense. It does not need to go before the voters.
Right.
It can be approved by the board only. The only thing is that you might lose some aid by doing it that way. You don't get your 10% incentive aid if you don't put it in front of the voters.
Right.
So we'll have to explore that and decide if that's something.
But the board would also, Fred, have to decide, what do they want to include? Do they want to include putting solar panels on the roofs?
Yes.
All of that.
Or carport solar panels or anything like that. Yes.
The parking lot becomes a giant solar collector, right? Okay. So, all right. So I guess then the next thing that needs to happen is that there needs to be an agenda item on the next board agenda that says, hey, board, do you want to pursue the RFP for this? And I was going to ask you, once we get done making whatever our recommendation is here, the next board meeting is a work session on March 2nd, and we may be coming back to the board with whatever recommendation we come upon here, and the board would like to invite you to come as well and answer their questions. And while you're there, you could also talk about the energy performance contract.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to.
Great.
David,
Yes.
Mr. Warner, I think, yes, this needs to go to the board. I think this committee needs to continue the discussion, going back to the phase 1, phase 2, the two $5 million pots.
Sure.
If suddenly on the vote, we're going to have put the leftover money aside for next year for a repair reserve fund, a possible EPC and a possible bond issue, we might need to consider what the smart way to go is. So it doesn't look like we're asking for a lot of money out of pockets, because 2 of those 3 items would not be out of pocket. Just wanted to state that.
Correct. So then what we will need to do is see if people, well, first we're going to finish answering everyone's questions. And I think you even have a list of questions from some email chains that we'll answer. Well, you'll go over, you're going over what's in each phase from your summary sheet after we get done going from here to there, from building to building. And then we do that. Then you answer all of our questions, and then we start figuring out what our recommendation is. Are we in favor of phase 1? Do we want to modify phase 1? Are we in favor of phase 2? We want to modify phase 2. Do we want to add anything from your list of things that didn't make phase 1 or phase 2? Because I see those totals are a little lower than $5 million. Do we want to do anything to address the? I believe there are people who are looking for a reduced cost version of the ECP wing, right? Does that play into our long-term plans? So we're going to piecemeal it. We'll see if people agree to pieces of it and build up our recommendation. So go ahead with your process. First, is anything else? Anybody wants to look at any particular buildings?
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Fred, I'm not sure. I couldn't really, when I was looking at these lists earlier, I couldn't figure out whether you marked somewhere those things that we must do. In other words, that you were saying that SCD will require us to do because we have to conform to code.
I did not actually single them out. No, we just included all of those in phase 1. I can do that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful, because then I think as we go through these items, no one can say, oh, I really don't like this one. If you point out to people that this is one that is, it's uncircumventable, so to speak, because it is a requirement.
It's going to be probably 80% of that phase 1, and the bulk of it is going to be at Bailey, and with ventilation issues at Bailey. Got it.
Okay. Also, would you just mind going back to your final tally, that final yeah. I feel really dumb, but what? Oh, so this was, I see. So this was the previous, and this is your okay, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So what the columns mean, ARCH is architectural, MEP is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So those are the engineering items.
Okay.
And then we total them and we come up to a little over 5 million. So I was actually kind of happy when Lisa mentioned before that you might have a little bit of extra money available, because we were struggling to keep it under 5. And then in the right-hand column there, you see the energy performance contract, which is, again, pays for itself out of the energy savings. And then when you scroll down to phase 2.
I can't scroll down.
Oh, no, Jim can, though.
Jim can.
Jim, that was your cue.
Okay.
You'll see that we only came up with about 3.65 million in phase 2. But if Jim continues to scroll down, you'll see these are the things that are not included. So the admin, all of that HVAC in the administration building is not in there.
Right there.
The
Okay.
78 addition, which somebody asked about before, is not in there. The Bailey, which is the fresh air intake for that classroom that they created on the balcony, which you're not using right now, is not in there. Highview, again, that building was designed with no unit ventilators. It has operable windows and exhaust. And then the last two items were roof replacement, partial roof replacements at Highview in the middle school. We included the worst building in the plan. But these two buildings, which one was that, Jim? Which one do we include?
We felt Highview was the
Phase 2.
the one that was the most critical.
But didn't we include Highview in phase 2, Jim?
Yes, in phase 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, portion of it.
No, I think that wasn't the whole thing in phase 2 at Highview?
I do not think so.
That's Bailey. Is
that Bailey?
You just click on Bailey? Or did you just click on Highview?
It's Highview.
Oh, no, it's Highview. Okay.
Would have been up here.
Flat roof areas.
Flat roof. There it is.
Yeah, so Highview, we already included that roof in phase 2 because that is the worst roof by far that you guys own. And, you know, again, another priority that you guys were looking at, which I forgot to highlight before, was building envelope. That was kind of something that was very clear that got sent back to us either at the meeting or through the dialogue that occurred afterwards. So
right.
That
so
was
ventilation phase 1, building envelope phase 2. So
right.
it worked very well.
Yeah, so that is already in there. So I apologize. I double dipped. I put that 400,000 in on that.
Right, we may have had that earmarked towards another building. I have to go back and look at my notes. I may not have been clear on that to you initially.
Oh, all right. So, and those are two partial roof replacements. So
Right.
these are things that we looked at and said, wow, I really wish we had another $6.3 million to work with. But again, our phase 2 was a little bit under, so we might be able to pick a couple of these items and work them in. We kind of did that on purpose because we figured we'd get a little bit of feedback from the committee tonight. And if you said, hey, we really think the admin, the HVAC, the admin is important, try and work that back in, then we could work that back in, or, you know, whatever. So we kind of left a little bit of headroom in there so that we could have a discussion tonight about that.
And I just have to put my 2 cents in because I've been saying roof on all my buildings. One of the things that I did do research on, Miss O'Neill and myself, we ended up going to I don't want to say a seminar, but White Plains had this solar that's in Westchester County, you know, funded by, I believe, Con Ed. And one of the things that we want to go solar, the minute they asked us, how old is your roof? Is it older than 5-7 years old? And Fred, you're laughing because the minute it's older than 7 years old and ours is about 20 years old, 30 years old, they will not put solar on our roofs. And I really would love to go that route. And it could be part of an EPC. But once again, now we're back to the roofs. I'm just putting it out there because I believe in order to go one way, we have to foot something.
And
Right,
can I
Fran?
just add, there was a comment in the comment section about the last time you guys went out for a bond and an EPC that the community was skeptical about an EPC.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I've been doing this for 24 years, and my first EPC I tracked diligently with our EPC contractor just to make sure that they were providing what they said that they were going to do. So, you know, that is the charge of the business office, as I see it, that I have to make sure, Mike has to make sure that they are performing to what they promised the district. And if they didn't, then we're going to hold them accountable.
Right. And, you know, that is a fair comment because I've heard that comment many times. I've heard people call it smoke and mirrors and, things like that. Some people don't believe in them, but we've probably done 30 or 40 energy performance contracts. And again, we've met the savings on every one of them so far, except for one. And it turned out to be rebates. So when they do this, they also guarantee rebates.
Right, exactly.
And they
Fred.
didn't meet the rebates, and they ended up writing the district, I think, $150,000 or $200,000 check.
Right.
because they
You
didn't-
know, I have always treated myself that I live in the district that I serve, that I'm a taxpayer, and hey, are you providing what you're saying to me? And if you're not, then you're going to pay because you signed a contract with us. End of story.
And they do, on the surface, they do seem too good to be true. So we're going to get all this work done. It's not going to cost us anything. What's the catch? I don't believe it. How can you prove the energy savings? How can you prove that you're actually saving that much in your utility bills? And as Lisa said, that's where the district comes in.
Right.
You have to track that, and you have to make sure that you are saving what they told you were going to be saving. Don't rely on them tracking it. And it was interesting. The state did.
Exactly, Fred. Don't rely on them tracking it.
Right.
We have to do it.
Right. And if you do that, then you will know whether you're saving or not what they promised you and what they guaranteed you were going to save.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, very good. Let's finish with any. Does anyone have any other questions before we go over the top level summary of phase 1, phase 2, etc.?
So I had a list of questions in here, David. Do you have that handy, Jim?
You just have to scroll down.
No, I think it's separate. So these are the questions that came up either at the last meeting or through the email thread that went around as people asked questions. So again, our first comment there is, we had 30 million in priority 1. I mentioned this before. So it was difficult for Jim and I to try and prioritize all of that and figure out, what we should recommend with the 10 million. But I think we're comfortable in what we recommended tonight. So again, phase 1, it talks about. Phase 2, it talks about how we prioritized. The thing that's missing here is building envelope, which should be in phase 2. And I meant to type that in there and I did not. I left that out. But, that is one of the criteria.
We have lintels, that's part of the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. It is part of the envelope. But, roofing was part of the
right,
envelope as well. And
Right.
I didn't include that in there. So I will
Right.
correct that. If you scroll down, Jim, is the list of questions at the bottom of this page. So you could see what we didn't include in the energy performance contract there. So you can see what we did include if you scroll up a little bit. So those are the major items we did include in the 3.8 million. You can see what we didn't include, which I think at least some of which will fit very nicely into an energy performance contract. Again, I mentioned, a couple of million probably.
Okay.
And let's see if we scroll down a little bit more. All right. Well, they're a list of questions. So before we get to the new building thing. So one of the questions that came up last time is, when is the building condition survey report required for Greenburgh to be sent to state education department? So you are required to perform your BCS in 2022. The board hired us to do it now as a facility study because they knew that you guys wanted to do long-term planning. So they had us do it early. Once 2022 comes around, we will just update the report. It has to be uploaded to SED by March 1st of 2023. So that's when you're actually officially due, but you have all that information now so that we can do planning together. The next one that got asked is, can the EPC fresh air upgrades be completed by September? And unfortunately, the answer is no, they cannot, because that money is not going to be approved until May at the May budget vote. I believe you need voter authorization on that. So once that money gets approved, we then do the design. We then send it to the state education department, who right now is at 3 months. And then we have to bid it and award it. So, and order the equipment, get it on site and install it. So we would not be able to complete those fresh air upgrades by this September, the way the project stands. So I just want to let you know that. I know that was a question. I wish I had a better answer for you.
Fred, that's ECP, right?
Yeah, that
Oh,
was
I'm
my
sorry.
question.
Energy performance contract. Yeah, so
I'm sorry. You're right. It is ECP. It's the anesthesia I had today. Sorry.
Can I just ask?
Oh, wait. Okay, so that completely changes the question. You're saying, can the ECP fresh air upgrades be completed by September? And you
Yes.
said that money needs to be authorized.
Yes.
So the money that we already have on hand, since we don't have to pass a bond for it, I assume the long pole in the tent was going to be getting SED approval. And if we say, look, we evacuated people to Highview, and because the ventilation wasn't up to quality in terms of safety at the ECP main building. So does that qualify as an emergency fix? Because if we're trying to bring all our students back, then they have to go somewhere, and we have to be up to current standards.
Well, I think as was discussed earlier, if that is a capital reserve, in order to expend money from a capital reserve, you have to get voter approval. So if that is in fact a capital reserve, I don't think you would have that money available until after the May budget vote. Lisa, is that correct?
Go ahead.
We have the repair reserve.
Yes, that is correct. And I have to just make sure that we don't have a capital reserve.
What about the repair reserve?
No, that's only for repairs.
It's
This
new.
is a brand
It's a
new
thing,
system.
so it has to be from the capital pile.
Right.
Yes. And I don't know how your repair reserve is set up. Some repair reserves require voter authorization as well.
We require a public hearing.
No, it's not set up that way. Okay.
Right. No, it just is to approve an amount to go in, and then they can take it out. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's an issue, because we're hoping that teachers get vaccinated, enough students get vaccinated, testing gets put in place, all that stuff that's in the works that the documentation hasn't reached us yet. And once that happens, then we want to start bringing our students back. And then we have to get people out of Highview and, ECP students out of Highview and the admins, and put them somewhere. So we were hoping that the ECP building was the quickest thing that we could do to get everybody back in place. If that is not the case, what's our best option?
Well, if it's not a capital reserve and it's a capital fund,
then we're okay.
Then we might have access to that money now, and we might be able to try and get that designed. I would have to look at the timeline and see if that's something that we could promise you would be done by September. But that would certainly make things a lot more doable than if it's set up as a capital reserve.
Okay, so we need to work on funding that. Okay, very good. So when will we know the answer to that? Lisa, is this a matter of a couple of weeks, or?
No, not a couple of weeks. I could probably figure it out within, say, the next week or two.
Okay, so by the time we hit the March meeting, we'll know the answer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, fair enough. That's important. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, next question. Sorry about that typo. That was bad. Are the older buildings grandfathered in? So the answer is maybe. So if it is an item that is on the evaluation from existing building form, EEB form, for instance, I'll take the unit ventilators at Bailey. That building was designed with mechanical fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
Those unit ventilators have not worked in many, many years, 30 plus years. So that would be checked as a non-conformance on the EEB, because the building was designed with mechanical fresh air and it currently does not have mechanical fresh air. So that would not be grandfathered in. In the instance of Highview, where it was designed with operable windows and an exhaust system, that building would be grandfathered in. And it's not even grandfathered in, it actually meets current code. So it depends upon the situation. And that kind of ties into the next question: how much would it cost to bring how much would it cost to bring the buildings up to code? So that is a very, very difficult thing to do. Code changes every year. And to try and, for the state, federal government, whoever it is, to require school districts or anybody keep their buildings up to code on a yearly basis would be cost prohibitive. There's no way you could afford to do that. So that's why they create, okay, if it met code at the time the building was built, and it's not a dangerous condition. And again, SED grandfathers most things in, some things they don't, like the Bailey HVAC. So how much would it cost to bring all the buildings up to code? You would have to knock the buildings down, start over, and then rebuild them. And by the time you got done building them, they wouldn't meet the code 2 or 3 years from now. So it's a very, very difficult question to answer for you. Most districts don't bring their buildings entirely up to code. For instance, right now, the R value on your roofing and your walls doesn't meet the current energy code. But we can't really change that unless we rip the roof off and redo the roof. Then we can change that. But I can't really change it on the walls. So it's called pre-existing non-conforming. It exists. It met code at the time. It doesn't meet current code, but that's okay. It's allowed to stay that way. So I don't know if that answers that question entirely in your mind. I think a couple of people might have asked that question. I hope it does, that explanation. I know it's kind of rambling. I blame it on the surgery. But if you have any questions on that, please let me know. I'll try and clarify.
And a lot of times, if we're going into an existing space and we reconfigure it in any way, that's when it triggers code compliance. So if the building was being, worked on and nothing was happening to a specific room and it had these, existing issues, they could remain that way. But the minute we go in and, subdivide a room into 2 spaces or start, doing, interior finish work, the state is going to require that other elements within that space be brought up to current code. So there's a trigger mechanism that, 100% of your building may not be code compliant, but specific areas that you're doing, an extensive amount of work to, the state would look at and say, well, is there fresh air being provided? That sort of thing.
Okay. Next question. First, anyone dissatisfied with that answer?
Okay, so the next one is, did the district do a cost benefit analysis of repair versus new? And Jim, if you scroll up on this page, at the top of the page, these are the parameters that we use when we do a comparison. So a new building nowadays, fully loaded, construction costs plus all contingencies and fees, escalation, all of that. And we discussed this when we talked about the ECP edition at Highview, is $800 a square foot. Okay, so that's new. Existing building. So if you have an existing building, like say Bailey, and you decide you want to demolish it, the demolition alone of that building is about $100 a square foot. Then the renovation so now that's new. So really a new building would cost you $900 a square foot. So renovation of a building will cost you, complete gut interior renovation will cost you $400 a square foot, plus the facility study items that we've identified here, some of which will actually be taken care of as part of the full gut that we do there. So if you just look at the numbers, typically renovation of a building, because you own it, it's an asset the district currently owns. You own the property, you own the building. Typically renovation of a building will cost you about 50 or 60% of what a new building would cost. So it is almost always less expensive to renovate in place as opposed to knocking down and building a new building. What's the downside to renovating in place? Well, like Bailey, it's got smaller classrooms. So we might have to knock down walls and make bigger classrooms. We just did a very similar project over in Scarsdale schools at the Green Acre Elementary School. We put an addition on that building and we made that building basically like a brand new building, completely renovated and completely gutted the inside of it. There were a lot of residents in that community that were very skeptical, which I think are very happy with what that building looks like. It's absolutely gorgeous. And, you know, if you ever get a chance to go over and take a look at it as kind of like a thought of what you could do to Bailey, you can do that. So, so as a general rule, it is less expensive to renovate a building, renovate an existing asset, than it is to knock it down and build a new one. So hopefully that answers that question. And these are the numbers that we would typically use. And, you know, we work with a lot of construction management firms. They are using the exact same numbers. We're all using the same numbers. So this kind of gives you a pretty good idea what you're doing. We just had one building that we actually found it would have been more money because the building was condemned and it needed so much structural work that it just didn't make sense to try and save it. But we've had buildings that were closed for 5, 10, 15 years. And it was actually less expensive to reopen that building, take care of all of the damage that had occurred and put an addition on it and reopen that building than it was to build new. So I hope that answers whoever question that was.
Okay, next question.
Last question was, has the district analyzed selling the mansion to benefit the district and community? So, you know, I don't know. There was a bond referendum. Yeah.
You can't sell the mansion. It's on 475 West Hartsell. You can't sell any of the buildings on that property.
I can list out for you, it's in the deed, what the allowed uses are for anything that's part of a part of the grant that the Warburgs gave us. And so you're allowed to use it for a site or sites for schools of the local school district, primary, elementary, secondary, or otherwise, as a site for a public library, as a site for a program of adult education, and the development of senior citizenship, a site for outdoor theater, a site for publicly supported college or university, a site for central administrative offices, which is what we do with it now primarily, as a site for such other educational, cultural, and human relationship group activities as the Board of Education of the party of the second part shall from time to time determine to carry on said real property or to permit others to carry on said property or for nature study and park purposes. So there's a set of uses we could have for it. We couldn't outright sell it, but we could, you know, lease it to a college if that were, you know, something somebody wanted and that's the allowable list of uses. Anybody else? All right. Are there any other questions?
I do not have any other questions that I picked up, unless somebody else has something this evening. I'd be more than happy to answer them if I can.
All right, then let's go back to the summary sheet of the costs for phase 1, phase 2.
Okay.
So looking at phase 1.
So we're a little bit over the 5 million in phase 1. We're at 5.1. With the yellow highlighted recommendations that you'll see in the report.
Correct.
And you'll see architectural and engineering, and then totals.
And I wanted to make sure that that Bailey had its had the 30 boxes in the rooms that increased the ventilation, and we saw earlier that it did.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure that that ECP main building, let's see, Jackson, Highview, Bailey.
I call it Early Childhood
ECP
Center down at the bottom.
Has there's the 577. All
yes,
right.
I included that in there.
So so those are my two things that would have to be in there for me to vote for it and vote for a recommendation for it. So I am satisfied, I believe, with phase 1. Does anybody else have any needs that they see in phase 1 or concerns about phase 1? Okay, hearing none. So my next question is, does this committee recommend the implementation of phase 1 for at least initially to the Board of Education as something for us to attempt to take care of in the next, beginning the next school year?
Yes.
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 Is there anyone who's in disagreement? Okay, so phase one, by acclamation, pretty much. Recommended. Okay, now, how long will it take to complete phase one? If we don't do both things simultaneously, how long would it take from the point that the board says, yes, we do this, we hand them the recommendation in March? How long will it take to get this stuff done?
Well, as soon as we determine whether the money is available now or the money won't be available until May, let's assume that it's available now because it's a, repair reserve. We can use that money. And let's say it's a capital, not a capital reserve where you need voter authorization. As soon as the board gives us the authorization to proceed ahead, we will start our design work. It's probably going to take us, I'm going to say 3 or 4 months to design this because there's a lot of complex work here.
Yeah.
So let's pick, I don't know, March 1st, we start designing. Let's say 4 months from there would be July 1st. We send it up to the state education department. Let's say state education department is at 3 months review at that point. So October 1, we get approval from SED. Then we have to put it out to bid. So between bid and award, it's probably going to take another month. So now we're looking at November 1, and then we award it to a contractor. So that contractor is then going to start work probably early 2022, but there are certain projects in here that you can't do during the school year. Number one, unit ventilators are going to take probably 4 months to get on site. So he orders them, January 1, they're not going to show up until April. You don't want to do them during the heating season anyway. So chances are a project like that would be done next summer. We would schedule it to be done over the summer because we got to get in and we got to rip the existing units out. We have to do masonry work. We have to do electric. It's a very intrusive type of a project. So I think you're going to want to do that over the summer recess. Other projects in here, like the controls work, we do have some controls work in here. That can be done during the school year after hours. So from 3 to 11, we can do some of that. So it will depend upon the.
Wait, we're in summer 2022, summer 2022 at this point?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Some of it might be able to happen a little bit sooner, David, maybe spring 2022.
Well, I'm hoping that that we can fast track the ECP thing. So that's my big question as to whether we can push that as an emergency or not.
Yeah.
But, okay, so for the whole thing to get done, you're looking at the end of summer 2022.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yes.
Complete.
David, when did you say that they're meeting with, I forget who in the government about the CARES Act money? Would that be an opportunity to ask if this could be considered an emergency to get full student attendance?
Lisa, was that later this week? Or next week?
That's this week, but I don't think any of this could go under that.
Okay, it'd have to go to SED and not, okay, thank you.
Right, yep.
So we can reach out to SED and ask them if a project like this would qualify as a COVID emergency project and find out what the parameters then would be. I think they might give us an expedited review, but
well,
again,
they might give that to you, Fred, but the CARES Act money has already been earmarked.
Right. But you're using your own money.
Time, yeah. Even if we don't get the money, we need the time.
Right. Right.
That's the most important piece.
Right.
Yeah, I thought you meant using your money to see if we could get the state to approve it. But you're right. If it's CARES Act.
Oh, no. This is the state's money, or actually it's the federal's money that's flowing through to the state.
Oh, okay.
But my goal was to accelerate the time. He was going where I wanted to go. It's what the money at this point, we'll find it. It's just we need the time.
Yes, because worst case, you're into July, and then you if we include $1.3 million in next year's budget, then by the time we get there, the money will be there.
Right.
So even if we, yeah, right. Okay, good. So that's phase one. Now,
David,
yeah.
this is Carlos Ramirez. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Carlos.
Hi, hello everyone. And I just wanted to share with you that there is another set of CARES Act that is in preparation at the federal level, and that's probably what some of the people from the community heard about. And this one is probably going to be released to help in the process of improving facilities for health, for prevention of the virus, for health prevention and everything. So I believe that is still in the preparation stage. It's not released or approved by the federal government, but that would be like a second round that we could also apply. If that is if that was the reason for the comment previously. Just wanted to mention that.
Good.
But as soon as they release the information, we can probably share with the committee, and then we can look. I remember that all federal funding goes first to the state, and the state creates the programs and the regulation, what you need to fulfill to get the funding. So and that's normally the process.
So my question is, how do they allocate that funding? Are they going to allocate it the same way they do our building aid, or is there some other standard that we look a little better under?
They are following a different set of standards, similar to the CARES Act, and Lisa I think that she just was instrumental in getting that in place with the state, but they are looking at two different main categories, which is improvement on facilities and improvement in technology. And there is also another piece that is to support the health and, the preparation of the buildings with enough ventilation and everything to support the going back, the in-person learning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So how do we pursue that?
We have to keep an eye on those opportunities, and at the moment that it happens, apply appropriately and provide with all the documentation that is required. In most cases, is part of this process, what you are doing is analyzing and gathering the data on what is needed. So this is the first step. Once we have all the needs in order, then we can apply for those.
And I think we're gathering those needs. I think we're good unless we get into some kind of situation in which they say, no, you already have the money. I think we can probably provide information with no difficulty. Good. So we're waiting for that to become something that we can actually apply for. All right. And all right, so let's continue then. Let's move on to phase two. Can you scroll us down to phase two? Okay, so the big feature from my perspective on phase two is we've gone building envelope. We've got that $2.4 million new roof on Highview. So I'm okay there. What I did want to do is, well, first, does anybody have any issues with what's in phase two? Anyone else? All right, hearing none. I'm wondering if we were to possibly take we do have that recommendation for the administration building. And the recommendation for the administration building is that we put forced air ventilation into it. And so then that is that 1.5 million there?
Yes.
So 3.6 plus 1.5, 5.1, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Almost
if we did add the administration piece in at that point, then we could get our high school back and move all the administrators back to the mansion. Since we can't really sell it, I think maybe that would be a good thing to do, but that's my opinion. What do other people on the committee think?
So what would happen to that building if we didn't do that? Would it still be usable, or is that one of these requirements, state requirements that we would be.
We had a recommendation from our air quality people that said that we should take care of this before we allow anybody to reoccupy the building.
So I had a long conversation with State Education Department, in fact, more than one, about that building. They consider it pre-existing, non-conforming, or grandfathered in. So it is not one of the items that they would force you to do, and it is not one of the items that would be identified on the EEB form as non-conforming.
Okay. So then my second question is this building similar to Bailey in the sense that you open the windows and you have an exhaust of sorts such that you actually do get airflow and hence you don't have to spend that amount of money on that particular piece of it? Because I'm sorry, and just to say, because that building does have other structural issues which might be actually more pressing.
Yeah, most of those I think are in phase 2 already.
They are. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't toggle back and forth between various screens. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I know. So that building does not have an exhaust system in it. It just has operable windows or natural ventilation. That building is grandfathered in because when you took over that building, the state approved it for the use in its current condition. And when you think about it, it was a house. Think about your house or think about my house. I don't have operable windows and an exhaust system. I have operable windows, but I don't have an exhaust system. So that's the way the mansion was constructed as well. It is grandfathered in, so it is not a problem. You could use the building the way it is. I know your air monitoring firm made a recommendation, to add fresh air in there, which is great. I mean, if money were no object, I think, I shouldn't even say that. I mean, that's not a bad recommendation. Let me put it that way. But it is not something that would be required by SED.
Okay, so it sounds like we may not be in agreement with adding the additional piece. So let's split it up. Let's first say, are we generally happy with what's already in phase 2, other than possibly adding something or not? And we'll handle it as a separate issue. Is there anything anyone's unhappy with about phase 2?
I just want to follow up on Tanya's question, please.
Sure.
Okay, I know we discussed this earlier. I just need a reminder. My brain is tired today. The 1.3 that we had planned on using for the admin building roof was that officially allocated? It was not officially allocated.
We already have that. The board already approved that project. That money set aside. That's not coming out of the money that we have in the pile shown. It's already been excluded.
Okay, so because okay, that's what I wanted to know, because I don't see it in the things that are earmarked. Mansion roof repairs only says 286,000 on the sheet that we went over with Lisa earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now as well.
I'm confused.
Yeah,
where
but
the other 1 million.
Excuse me, that was just the money that was going from the repair reserve.
So where's the other $1 million that theoretically is already put aside, or is that $1 million now in this?
That is the money from the budget that is going to the capital fund, the $1,331,000.
So we've not pulled it aside for the roof. So to do the roof, our pot of money goes down by $1 million. Is that what I'm understanding?
No.
The opposite.
The opposite. Just the opposite, because we're gonna take $1,331,000, put it for the roof, for the mansion, and then from the reserve, we're taking that extra 200 and something thousand and adding it to it.
Okay, so I'm going back to the list you had earlier, the capital fund and the reserve, the repair reserve. So you had the 1.598.
Yep, hold on, let me get my paper.
Yep.
So from the capital or from the repair reserve, where's that repair reserve? Mansion roof repairs, $286,370 from the capital reserve was going to be allocated to the roof repairs. And then in the capital reserve, so it's going to be transferred to the, so it's all in one account.
Okay, so how do you get to where you start? Okay, go so further up in the capital fund portion. Okay, you don't have it up. Capital fund balance 1.341. You found the 0.257.
Right. That's
okay, so that gets you to
1.598. All right, and that 1,598,760 we have to account for. 1,300,000 of that money is for the mansion roof.
Okay, so that just moved out. That's a subtraction then.
Correct. Correct.
And that brought us to, okay, 1,598,760. What's this 2 point, in addition to these funds are set aside in FB, fund balance, I'm guessing.
Yeah, fund balance. Right. Exactly.
Okay. And we took out the money we spent this summer. And that's your 1 point. Okay. And then we pull that out. And then we subtract. Okay. So this needs to be like a subtraction that we moved. Okay. Transfer.
Right.
All right. And that comes down to, I messed up. Okay. So it's taken out already. So, all right. I just want to be sure we're not double counting. So that means we don't have to, if we add in the admin to phase 2 to bring it near 5, if we're going to continue discussing, then that means the roof still gets covered. And we would have, okay, and then that 1.5 is what Tom is just discussing. Is it important? Okay, got it. I'm caught up.
Just to interrupt for a moment, I need to tell you, we do have one requirement that the building be weather tight, and that's with our part of our original agreement with Friedrich Schiff Warburg. There's a 1956 memo that says this will confirm the statement by Mr. Snyder, the president of the Board of Education, to Mr. Strzok on July 16th, the effect that any land that you may give to the school district will be kept in appropriate condition, and any buildings thereupon over which you or your family do not retain control will be kept weather tight until they are put to an appropriate use or raised. So we know what the appropriate uses are. We know what, so weather tight, I assume the roof, because that mansion is probably the one building they cared the most about. As long as it's there, we have to keep the roof gun taken care of. So that's that piece. It doesn't say anything about ventilation. It just says weather tight. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to be sure it wasn't either or on the roof or the ventilation. So I've caught up with you. It's nice. I hadn't been aware of that clause. So, all right. So thank you.
Fred, I'm just going back because this gave me an opportunity to look back at your Excel sheet regarding the admin building. I can't for the life of me see the 1.5 million for the ventilation.
Okay, Jim, can you go to that?
I'm trying to like add up all the stuff and I see. I just saw
orange,
it. It's orange. It's an orange.
Orange.
Yeah.
It's the orange. It's a special category.
All right.
It's
So
orange.
now stop right there, Jim. So in phase 1, I did include 475,000 for the pre-K area. So that was assuming that they were going back in there and they were going back in the ECP building. So if that's not a good assumption and you're going to build a wing somewhere, move them into your other facilities, then we can take that money out. But I think based upon the input I got from the committee, I think that was kind of the discussion that we had. So that money is in there. But you're right. Sorry. The 1.5 million is in orange below.
Okay, so wait, David, so they would be coming back to the mansion and not just staying where they are?
That's a very good question, because
Yeah.
so what you've had 2 successive waves of evacuation. The Highview the evacuation from the mansion, which put kids in Lee F. Jackson, and then the second evacuation to Highview, which emptied the ECP building, right? So in the short run, the plan is to leave the Lee F. Jackson kids in place in the classrooms they're sitting in right now, and but we have to move the Highview kids and the administrators back to someplace else, because all those Highview students are coming back. So in the short run, the thought was we were not going to put them in the mansion. We were going to put them back in the ECP main building, which is why I'm pushing on that. My problem, if I try to put 5 class, I don't think, is it 5 classrooms they were looking for?
We wouldn't, hi, David, it's Debbie.
Yeah.
What we have now in Highview would not fit in the mansion.
Right.
The mansion, we only have those 3 classrooms in there. And what we're looking for is 4 classrooms, the nurse's office, the admin office, and the therapy room.
So.
But is that available back in Lee F. Jackson? Once we go back to a regular schedule, is that all available at Lee F. Jackson?
No, unless we build a wing.
Right.
So this will be on top of now of the classrooms that we, okay, I'm really confused now.
Okay.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering. So this is now on top of those extra ECP classrooms that we created already at Lee F. Jackson. You're saying that now on top of that, we need 4 more plus the nurse's office, et cetera, et cetera. So what you're saying is that either that they can't go back to Lee F. Jackson, they have to come back to the mansion.
Well, no. They were never at Lee F. Jackson, those children. They were at the main building.
Right, okay, got it, okay.
So now that the main building has been closed, they moved us to Highview. So now once in September, if the children all come back to Highview, then where would ECP then go? So the choices would be either a wing at Lee F. Jackson, redoing the main building, and what's the third one? And the mansion wouldn't work because we don't fit in the mansion.
Oh, wait, we're talking about the kids that came out of this, quote, stables, actually, not the, okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that was my confusion. I forgot about that one, okay, sorry.
So now my question is, do we need this $475,000 worth of work to happen in phase 1 at the mansion if we're not going to put any kids there?
So the reason that I included that is because when we walked Highview, where the kids were before COVID, the kids were not in appropriate teaching spaces. They were in the lobby, which is an exit way from the building. So the kids can't go back in there. They can't stay in there. So you would have to find another place for those kids that were at Highview in that area. So that's why I put this in there, in order to carry a placeholder as a thought. But that's one of the things that I wanted to get, your ideas on as far as what the long-term plan was, or the short-term plan.
Okay. So go ahead.
No, so I'm just saying, so actually you have nothing slated for I hate to call them this, but I'm just going to say the stables. The
ECP main building.
The ECP main building, right, yeah.
And we have that. We have ventilation in that building as part of phase 1.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was assuming right now that you were putting kids back in the ECP main building and putting the rest of the kids back in the mansion the way it was before. That's what this plan right now is based upon.
Okay, right. Sorry, I'm also getting tired. Okay.
Correct. And I checked with Dr. Chase, and she basically confirmed that what we're trying to do in the short run is just move one set of kids, not both sets of kids. Okay, so I have and Dr. Reynolds as well. So we kind of confirmed that that's the short-term plan from their perspective. So given that, we don't have to do this $475,000 worth of mechanical ventilation in the mansion for the ECP children. If at some point we wanted to put ECP children back in there, we would have to have that done. But I don't know that that's our long-term goal. Our long-term goal is to get them all in one spot if we can. The only disagreement I've seen of people going back and forth is I think a lot of people want to move everything to Leo Jackson, and perhaps a few people would be just as happy to make the ECP main building larger and put the wing there instead, depending upon how much you want the independence of one group versus another. But I tend to lean towards consolidation and putting everything at Leo Jackson. So that's where we're at. It doesn't look like we need the $475,000 of work in phase one there. Is that correct? Does anybody have a different opinion?
I'm still not seeing where we're going to put these kids based on timeline alone.
Okay.
Right, we're saying that more than likely, once Lisa confirms the title of that funding, we still wouldn't be able to have this done before September. All right.
Correct.
So I'm still not understanding where we're putting these children. We have to have a place for them. I mean, it's just not, I don't know. Maybe it's
right.
It's been a long week.
So I tell you that this is another instance, as Tanya, I think, asked about before. Again, you put kids in there and the state education department allowed you to put kids in there without that space having adequate fresh air because it met code at the time. So you don't have to do this $475,000 worth of work in order to technically put kids back in the mansion. I just want to mention that. I think it was a priority. I thought it was a priority. I thought I heard it was a priority, which is why I included it. But technically, you could put those kids back in there without doing that work. There is other work that I would recommend, and I think we had given a previous list to the board. The cold water, some of the other yellow items in there, the cold water, the hot water to the bathroom sinks. Those are code requirements and are not grandfathered in. The ventilation is. So you do have that option at this building as well if you wanted to.
Again,
doesn't make it happen faster.
Well,
and it's not big enough.
The problem is it's just not big enough because it's not apples to apples. The kids that were in the mansion got transferred to Leo Jackson. There's a different setup that's in Highview, and we don't fit in the mansion. We don't fit in the admin building. You guys call it the admin building. We do not fit there.
No, I get that. I guess my point is, the way this sounds to me is that we do not currently have an option to, in September, put the kids back either at the mansion or at the main ECP building, because both of those projects would not be done by September. To Fred's earlier point, technically we can get away with it. I don't think any of us wants to do that though. So that's where my struggle is, because if we do go back to full in-person instruction, per the earlier comments, right, we need the space back at Highview. So I'm just not finding a way to do this in a way that makes me comfortable.
Correct. I agree with that. I don't know where we're going to be in September.
So let me make sure that one of my assumptions is correct. People have said, "Hey, let's go set up some trailers at Leo Jackson and have the kids sit in temporary trailers until we can get the buildings built." And what I've gotten from previous sets of architects is, no, it's not like you're a little private group that can just roll the trailers up on a truck and be done. There are hoops you have to jump through from the state education department, and by the time you get done doing everything you're supposed to, you might as well have built a building. Is that Fred? What is your opinion on that?
It takes at least a year to get portable classrooms in place at a school building. More if there are none available, which at this point, because of COVID, there are no used ones available. So they have to be custom built. So it's going to take a year plus in order to get those in place. So they would not be available for sure for this September.
So Fred, that leads me to another question. Is there a middle ground that we can do? Instead of doing, I'm the last person that would like to recommend that we do a Band-Aid approach at this point, but I'm not finding a good option here. Is there any middle ground we can take that by September that would be able to get those kids back in with some kind of ventilation that would make us all feel a little more comfortable with that situation?
So I think the options that we had talked about previously was you could put exhaust fans in the windows at the ECP building, and it would act like Highview. So you would have heat inside the building, you would have exhaust fans that are taking air out of the building and then bringing in fresh air, makeup air from other locations in the building. So you would be able to do that. The other thing you could consider is buying those air cleaners, those HEPA air cleaners. They are a HEPA filtration as well as pre-filters. So you can put those in the classrooms and they clean the air within the classroom. So that's another option as well. So there are a couple of things we can do to make those spaces better ventilated without doing the full mechanical ventilation that's carried in the report.
So we're doing what we would be doing, what we did at RJ Bailey. The question is the heating system at ECP as robust as it is at RJ Bailey? Is it good enough?
It's not designed for that technically, but I think as long as you kept the exhaust rates down to something reasonable, yes, I think you would be able to you would be able to use that system. And you're right, that's exactly what you guys did over at RJ Bailey. I think that would work at both the mansion for those ECP classrooms there, as well as the ECP building.
Well, if we're going to think about going back to the mansion, you've got an item here on page 1 of the admin building, BCS number 80, the original plaster ceilings above ECP 2 and 3. I would think we'd need to add that back in, frankly. I don't know what other people.
And what's the amount?
It's on the front page, number 80, 347,000, right there.
This we have, I think, more or less covered in the roof reconstruction project. And it's originally was thought that a lot of those plaster ceilings in that wing above, this is the area above the garage, I guess the maintenance garage. Right? So there's a bunch of small offices. Initially, a lot of those ceilings were looked at and thought to have been, original plaster ceilings that there were issues with. And then walking around with a gentleman, one of the lead, I guess, facilities guys over there, he pointed out that a lot of them had been previously done and replaced with chip, sheetrock ceilings, but that in the closet areas, the original ceilings were still there. So those, this number in cost and capacity would be less, which we already have encumbered in the roof reconstruction project as part of, removal of any questionable damaged materials that may be mold containing and that sort of thing. So whether it might not be all ceilings, there were some walls that we saw that were damaged that need certain repair, cracks and peeling. We would be stripping that plaster and replacing it with chipboard. So we have a fair amount of that money covered in the roof reconstruction project currently.
So if I were to color code which are in the roof project, am I color coding that one and 2 lines down, number 73, the 1.080, let's call that roof, and the 290, what, no, that's the stairs.
Slate roofs would be 73, yeah, so that's there. Yeah, so it's really that portion and 80.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify that, that's not specifically the ECP classrooms, right? You mentioned the closets, you mentioned the area by the garage, but what is the actual situation with the ECP classrooms in that building?
So really the only thing we're doing there is removing that plaster ceiling that's above the existing drop ceiling. And to get to that ceiling, we have to take down the ceiling that's in the ECP right now. So both those ceilings will be removed. Access will be provided for the plaster ceiling. That'll all be taken down. Then a new ceiling and lighting will be put back in place in those 2 rooms. But the rooms, the way they exist, will be untouched in size and configuration.
So just following this chain of thought. So what we're saying is we can technically get away with And when I say get away, I'm not talking about according to code at SED. I'm talking about what I think we can all mutually agree on. The bare minimum for these ECP children in terms of ventilation is we can get away with basically more or less what we did in RJ Bailey, setting up window type exhausts with the heating system, trying to make up the difference with the heating and cooling load. And then that would be a stopgap measure in the interim until we were able to get all the clearances and funding and everything else to do the long-term plan, which is the rework of the ECP main building ventilation system and whatever ventilation we need to do at the mansion for those 2 classrooms. Am I getting that right?
I guess the question being, are the rooms big enough, as one person was alluding to, that the rooms themselves aren't configured to be big enough to handle the students that they have over there? So I don't know what would have to be done with that. That would be the only question I have.
Right, correct. The children in Highview, the ECP children, staff, therapist, nurse in Highview do not fit in the mansion. It's impossible. They do not fit in there. There's only 3 classrooms there. That's it.
Correct. So my point was, we do the Band-Aid fix at both the main ECP building and the mansion as a stopgap until we can get the permanent ventilation systems in both locations corrected.
Well, if you put the children back in the main ECP building with the Band-Aid, we don't need the mansion at all. We don't need the admin building at all.
Okay.
And then the question becomes,
oh my God, thank you. It's finally clear. Thank you for saying that.
okay. And then the question becomes, then the question becomes, how long does it take to do the permanent ventilation in ECP main building as opposed to the temporary fix? So what is the horizon on that? What is the actual period of time that will take if we make an emergency out of that? Is that it's there by December, or is it worse?
No, it might be there by December. And part of that will depend upon the answer that Lisa comes up with as to whether it's a repair reserve or not.
Okay. So it's still worth doing. Good.
Angie, we're going to check. Wasn't BBS going to check to see if there could be a consideration that this could be emergency because of COVID?
Yes, we're going to call the state and see if it's going to be emergency. But in order to declare an emergency, you have to have the funds available.
Correct. It's just a 2-parter to get it moving more quickly.
Right. And the question I have going back to that, Debbie, is you mentioned that if you bring the kids, the ECP kids out and you put them back in the old ECP building, you don't need the mansion. Is that just based upon the current project or the current enrollment, or is that based upon the enrollment that you had pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID.
Correct.
So they all fit in the ECP building?
They all fit in the ECP building and BF Jackson.
Together.
But Jackson is only a temporary thing until you come back full time.
I don't think that's temporary.
Jackson, we evacuated the mansion a year before, okay? Before COVID.
No, that's not temporary. Yeah, that's so can I just do a synopsis here, because I think it's getting really late and I think we're all now starting to like run around in circles. So I think that so there is this issue of the main ECP building, whether it can be emergency. If not, we do a temporary fix until we get it fixed, whatever. But the bottom line is that we don't actually have to spend that 450 whatever thousand on the mansion to fix the ventilation. So that's like a savings on phase 1, so to speak, right?
Correct.
And so that money could actually be used to do maybe more of the really necessary work either elsewhere or at the mansion to consolidate, the structural issues basically. And now I just found out from David that we also have an obligation to actually keep this building intact. So that was kind of my point. I think we're just all in agreement now, phase 1 and phase 2. It's just that this money kind of got shifted maybe to something else in phase 1.
I'm in agreement as long as we're talking about the Band-Aid fix as well, pre-phase one.
Right,
That's
yes,
my biggest concern right now with everything.
correct, yeah.
And the cost for the Band-Aid fix is minimal?
I mean, it's probably similar to what we did at RJ Bailey, right?
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, I don't think that's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. Okay, good. So, just to formalize this, are we in agreement that we do not need the $475,000 in phase one and we should exclude it?
We should reallocate it.
We will reallocate it for other repairs. Okay.
Yes.
So for everyone in agreement? Okay.
Yes.
Yes? Okay,
Yes.
good, good. So you now have $475,000 to play with that you did not have before. So I assign that back to you, architects, to try and come up with an equivalent repair that you would fit into phase one.
Okay,
Good?
we will do that.
All right, and that's what we'll go forward with to the,
But David, maybe we need to discuss if we're going to do a phase two possible bond issue, because that 475,000 might come out of that pool of projects or elsewhere. Isn't that our next action point?
that is our next action point. Okay, so phase one and replace. Okay. So then, phase two. I will ask you the question that that we asked last time, which is, without any changes or additions of any ventilation or anything else, are we at least in favor of the existing items in phase two? Whether we add them on with another resolution or not, we can debate, but are we good with the baseline of phase two?
I don't want to confuse things, David, but
Okay.
recall, if we're going to move work out of phase two into phase one to replace that 450,000, you might even have a little bit less work in here.
Yes. Yes, that is entirely possible.
Sorry, I know it's late. I didn't mean to do that to you guys.
But we probably could move something out of what would be, I guess, phase three or future into phase two at that point, if it meets the dollar amount.
Yeah, these are the other items that, we looked at here as possibilities. Some partial roof replacement, building envelope stuff to go into phase two. And if you're moving some of the phase two work into phase one, you might be able to fit, a little bit more of that.
All right. So what you're telling me is that it's a little early for us to approve of phase two before we see what's in it. Because it's shifting.
Roofs.
Can
I
we
would
get
say, I'm sorry, if you guys are in agreement with the work that we have in phase two now, we'll use that as a starting point, and then we'll make some recommendations on what should move from phase two to phase one to use up that 450, and then maybe what recommendations we would put forth to then put into phase two to accommodate that.
All right, are we good there? Are
Yeah.
we in agreement on that?
Yes.
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 But David, I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
we still need to have a broad discussion about whether or not a phase two bond issue is a possibility for this year or not, just because of timing concerns. Maybe if we think it's a possibility, we can come back at the next meeting to specify exactly what goes in there. But I think we should at least have a broad discussion about, is it an option or not?
And are you talking about, what year are you talking about?
I'm talking about phase two bond issue this year in the May vote. If it's not an option, then that discussion doesn't have to.
Okay, so I am of the opinion that while the stock market has recovered and employment statistics are looking a little better than they have, that we don't know what's going to happen when we come out from under COVID, and depend whether we'll have like a mortgage default crisis. And I really, I am not in favor of going to bond this year. Do other people have a different point of view?
I will tell you, just from a timing standpoint, for the board to put that forth before the voters in May, you would have to make a decision by the end of March as to the exact scope and dollar amount. So not that that can't be done, but it's a pretty tight time frame in order for the committee to then recommend that to the board review that and decide to move ahead, talk to the public about it, and then get it up for this May's budget vote. It's a very tight timeline to begin with, but I just want to throw that out there.
Okay, other opinions, agreeing or disagreeing?
So what I would say is, if there's concerns that we think that commingling, or at least in the eyes of the public, commingling the EPC with the phase 2 bond theoretically that we would theoretically put out, I think we get more bang for our buck pushing the EPC if we're looking to get that 10% reimbursement with clear communication to the community and all that. I think we can probably do that by May, is my suspicion. Get that passed forward.
We've already recommended that. Okay.
And then I would say, I don't think we have enough time to push the bond issue by May. That's my suspicion.
Okay, so so that's two people who think that that we shouldn't do the bond, but we've already recommended the energy performance contract, and we've already got a recommendation for phase 1 using our existing reserves. All right, I'm not in favor of a bond for phase 2 for this year. You're not in favor of a bond for the phase 2 this year. Tanya?
So, I think it's never a good time to do a bond because you're basically asking people for more money. But I guess I feel that if we could keep the budget increase to a bare minimum, and in that bare minimum, perhaps forego what we were initially planning to do, which was basically ask for a 1.5 million that we were going to put back into the reserve. So if the budget increase was somewhere between 0 and 1%, that maybe we could ask for a modest amount. I don't know what that is, but probably not more than 5 million in my mind to repair the envelopes of the buildings. And I understand that even that might not go through, but I guess that would be my strategy, would be to, again, keep the budget increase to a minimum and then ask for money with this very clear and very simple sort of plan to just work on, these phase 2 issues, which are essentially envelope issues.
So you want to eliminate the $1.3 million from the budget, go to a 0% budget increase, and put up a $5 million bond.
I guess you could, yes, essentially, yes.
All right. I think that probably is risky. I think it's more likely that we can pass a budget with a modest increase.
I agree.
We can go for the 5 million. I think we're likely to end up with the people going, oh my God, the economy is terrible. They'll vote the budget in, and the bond will go down, and we'll end up with losing $1.3 million as a result of that. So
I buy your point. I buy it. I know. I hear what you're saying. I'm just telling you my preference.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with you, David, with the modest increase and the bond.
Oh, so you want both the increase and the bond?
Yes. A modest increase, not a large increase. I think our community is seeing what we're struggling through, and where children are being placed in different places. That's just my opinion.
Okay, so that then moves us to, well, let's very quickly, I believe you had requested, it's getting late. You had requested a lesser estimate on the, for a smaller ECP wing. Is that correct?
Are you talking to me, David?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, the figures I showed you were the what we need, the small amount we need, and it was smaller than the first wing.
And that ends up with 5 classrooms and associated administrative offices. And BBS, what was your what was your short-term estimate on that? If we had the smaller version, was it 7 million?
Yes. So a quick estimate on that would be 7 million. But if you do want us to take a look at that, I would like to draw that. If you know that's the direction you want us to go in and put a real estimate to that. But you know, just looking at the size of the one we proposed, which was 8 classrooms versus the 5 classrooms.
4 classrooms.
I'm sorry, 4 classrooms and then the other space. You know, it would be about $7 million. Again, you know, you saw how we came up with our number of classrooms, though. It was based upon the number of kids pre-COVID divided by 18 kids in a classroom. So I'm must be missing something here. I'm not sure how we got down to 4 classrooms. So we'd love to talk a little bit more about that and figure that out, and maybe draw a floor plan to show you what that looks like, and then put a real estimate on it.
All right. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Tanya.
On that. So David, I agree with the argument that you made, and I think that if by some chance we were to go for some tiny, small little bond, I think it's the sort of thing also that has to have something for everyone in it. So, you know, this is one of those things where, you know, bonds are more likely to succeed if, you know, every building gets something, right? Rather than just ECP, you know, and I'm not putting a value here or anything. I'm just saying that it's kind of a marketing issue, right?
So then if you were to say fix the ventilation, and
what
the high school gets is that all the administrators leave, and then you maybe fix up a couple of make a couple of small improvements to that space that's being rededicated to the students, then you've got woodlands somewhat covered. The ECP as the main piece, and then you cobble together some other small fixes for
it's phase 2 basically. It's phase 2, which has something for every building essentially. So, but again, I'm not going to argue this very strongly because I think it's just a very personal opinion, and I do hear your point loud and clear. But that's
okay. So for purposes of this meeting, why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and draw up the smaller version of the ECP. Well, we'll confirm it with the administration. Okay, we need to confirm it with the Dr. Chase. But let's perhaps draw up the $7 million version of the wing and figure out whether that goes into a bond with phase 2 or not. And we'll continue this to another meeting. At this point, we'll provide an updated version of phase 1 for the March meeting for the board, and not recommend a bond. Well,
we need to do it by month.
Let's see. Do we want to recommend a bond for a bond this year? That's the question.
Right. David, can I just say, I thank you for everybody who's given their opinion. I agree with the concerns of the commingling, like I brought up earlier. I'm leery of eliminating the reserve, but I feel like we need to go for a small bond. We've got a whole bunch of other people in this meeting who we haven't heard from, and I would love to hear what they have to think about this, because more variety of voices is one of your
Katie McGee has her hand up.
Yes. Hi. I guess I was trying to figure out whether I feel strongly about a bond not in May. I'm pretty sure I'm leaning against the bond in May. It just seems, but I'm trying to hear, like, maybe Chris or somebody else, or Tanya, I think what's the upside of doing it in May? what are the upsides? It's that we get people into the mansion faster, or
No, it's not about the mansion.
May as opposed to maybe October or the next May. What's the upside if we did the bond in this May?
So for me, the upside is just simply that these things clearly take a very long time to put into place.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why. That's basically the only reason. And that the longer you wait, the more work there will have to be done. So, you know, it's like your own house if you don't take care of it. So that's basically my reasoning.
Okay, and Lisa, are you were you able to do the calculations on what a $5 million bond would be for a year's property tax, like a $100,000 example assessment? Remember when
No, I
asked you?
haven't. No, I haven't done that yet, but I can. I definitely can, but I can only do it with what the interest rates and everything is now. But I can certainly do that.
Okay, well, would you
Okay, we gotta
email
make a
that
decision. Yeah,
or
you need to
how?
know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's just it might help my opinion. I don't know.
Sure, definitely,
Okay.
definitely can do that.
So there's one thing I want to add, and we would be remiss as your architects and engineers brought in with a fresh set of eyes. Eventually, the district should be thinking about a larger bond referendum. I'm not saying anytime soon. I understand COVID and the economy. You had a big bond that went down. A lot of this facilities item work was being taken care of in that bond. You're kind of playing catch up now. And there are a lot of items that need to be taken care of in your building. So eventually, I think you should start thinking about a larger bond referendum. I'm not saying 114 million or whatever the last one was, but you know, really start to consider that once the economy starts to get a little bit better and you feel comfortable putting something in front of the voters. I'm just throwing that out there as a thought for the future.
And that is that is what I think too.
So I disagree with that.
You
I
agree
really
with
disagree with that. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you why, Fred. It's just because we have a bit of an unusual district. And I think that doing maybe a few small bonds to start with and to show our community that we are actually able to, you know, take money and really start really fixing these schools. I think that would then go a long way into sort of priming the pump, so to speak, to eventually down the road ask for much more money. But what I'm concerned about is that if we just wait and then again come up with, you know, a 60 million or 70 or whatever bond, that it's going to end like the last one.
Well, that makes sense, and that's a good strategy, and I've seen other districts do that as well. So, you know, if that's the plan and that's the strategy, that I think that would work great. I just, you know, just long term, over the next 5 years or something. I just think
our scope was supposed to be 5 years, and I expected to do phase one, and by the time we got done with phase one, I would be ready for a bond for phase two. And my phase two, if I had my druthers, would include the ventilation for the mansion and, you know, put all of that stuff back, fix somebody's roof, you know, work on the building envelopes to a certain extent, as you have already laid out here. And if I can work in, if I think I can make it work and get that ECP project in there, if it's not too big, I would make that part of it. So that's what I want. But what do other people?
I also see the logic in that. So I'm really, you know, I hear what David is saying, and that also makes sense. So.
But your point about the timing, Tanya, is I think key. It takes so long. We have to get this approved. You have to do the plans. We won't begin getting into the muck of this for 2 years. So.
Right. So I'll make a suggestion. You know, I really, again, timing alone, I think it would be very unlikely that we're going to get anything done before May in terms of a bond. I just don't see it happening. So here's what my suggestion is. I suggest we move forward with what we've already kind of all agreed to, right? We'll move
Right, modified phase one, right?
We'll move forward with EPC. We'll move forward with the phase one that we've outlined out of our existing funding. Let's get that all in motion, right? And then I would suggest that we continue having this conversation with the goal of potentially, maybe by October of this year, maybe the economy will have already recovered somewhat enough that we can pull off a $5 million bond or something like that to tackle on the phase two stuff, which is priority as well, right? To Fred's earlier point, basically a lot of our BCS at this point is priority. And then maybe to Tanya's point, by the time we've gotten through phase one and phase two, we will have demonstrated enough to the community that we're able to handle these things and get them addressed in a reasonable manner and on budget. And then we could talk about, okay, what would the next steps be? But I would not foresee that phase two happening any earlier than October at the earliest, and it may translate into something maybe January 2022. That's just my personal take on it.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, because that makes a lot of sense. You're taking on a lot of work with a phase one, a phase two, and an EPC right up front, when you really haven't done a lot of, work in earnest up until this point. So to, kind of take this step, show the progress being made, and then just say, more things to come, and, then, that would be handled in the phase two. And, you can put together a bond any time of year. It doesn't have to coincide with the May budget. That's the beauty of that. Just the point where people have to come out and vote.
All right, so we will, okay, so that sounds like what we should do. We should go forward with our recommendation of slightly modified phase one and reconvene and try and put together a phase two with a slightly larger bond. And we'll look at that $7 million ECP wing as a possibly part of that. You can prepare that. Let me make sure, is there anyone else who has not spoken? Let's see, Katie McGee has spoken. Jessica Muldoon, do you have an opinion? Okay, no response there. Carol Allen, would you like to chime in? Okay, so I think we're going to go with what we have. All right, so that leaves us with scheduling the next meeting, and then we'll adjourn. We have our recommendations, and we'll move forward from there. So let's see. What do we need to have done before we can meet? How long will it take to get together the revised ECP wing?
I think if you schedule a meeting for a couple of weeks from now, that would give us enough time to get everything together we need.
Okay, so let's see. It is now. All right, so I've got. How about Thursday, March 4th? How does that look?
So we don't need to discuss anything before the work session on the 2nd? We have our proposals and nothing is left pending, correct? I guess here's where I'm going. ERS, TRS, cap, and repair split. Wasn't that going to be proposed at the March 2nd work session?
You are correct.
And I don't recall discussing it tonight unless I was writing something down and I didn't hear it.
Because we don't have the numbers yet, right? Okay, so what you would like to do, you're telling me, is you'd like to have a meeting prior to March 2nd to make sure everything's buttoned up.
Right, because all that has to be presented to the public, right?
Okay, so then we have, that's the week of the 22nd then, after we come back from the winter break, the winter recess, right?
Yeah.
So then how about, so I've got an audit committee meeting on Wednesday, a safety and technology committee meeting on Thursday. There's a governance and policy meeting on Tuesday. Is any board member here on that?
I think Ashley is, isn't he?
Yeah, I was just looking at my calendar. I am.
Okay, so then that leaves Washington's birthday. That leaves the 22nd.
Wait, David, the
Yeah.
audit was on the 24th, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday all have committee meetings. So we got our choice between Monday, the 22nd, or Friday, the 26th.
So the 22nd is not Washington's birthday. It's the week after Washington's birthday, right?
I don't know.
President's Day is the
just have on
15th.
my calendar, it says Washington's birthday. Whether it's actual Washington's
Oh,
birthday, it's not
President-
it's not a holiday.
President's Day is the 15th. Sorry, you're right. You're right.
Woodlands High School Scholarship Fund, I don't go to that. All right, so I'm for Monday at 6 p.m. What do other people think?
Wait, that's the 22nd?
22nd.
Okay, I have a wall calendar. Stay put.
Okay.
That works for me.
Works for me.
I'll tell you right now, I will try my
Yes.
best to be there, but I have an audit that day. Sometimes these things run long. So if I'm not there, just proceed without me.
Okay. Fair enough. Unless we want to make it, if we made it slightly later, you wouldn't know if whether or not you could come anyway, right? All right, so 6 p.m. Finance and Facilities Committee meeting on February 22nd. And by that time, we will try and come back with our modified version of phase one, and we will try and come back with how we're going to split up the numbers for the TRS ERS, and we will have a $7 million version of the of ECP, and we will have found our substitute from phase two to phase one, and we'll go from there.
Aren't we also going to have a new phase two then?
Yes.
Things would migrate, yes.
Okay.
All right, very good.
Which will be separate from the ECP because I mean, I think those two things are, that's a discussion actually. So anyway.
Right, so you come up with a small bond, and if you put the ECP in there, it becomes a larger bond. And either we say, yes, that's what we really want. No, that's not what we want. Or let's kick the can down the road to the board and give them the option of going either way. All right, is there anything else anyone wishes to discuss at this point? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everybody. We made some progress today. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank
Good night.
you, BBS.
All right, thank you.